Alrighty guys, so today I am attempting to clear up some of the confusion in the fourth order, subwoofer box building community. This stems from some posts I see on the internet, to things I hear, to things that I had to figure out on my own when I found out how to design fourth orders. So we're going to go into like the basics of what a fourth order is, and then some of the features and like the key details that actually matter when we are designing a fourth order enclosure. So I have 8 different subwoofers here. Those 8 subwoofers that we're going to be testing today, every single one of them is going to be a 15-inch subwoofer. This is mainly because it seems to be the number one sub size that people are asking for advice on, specifically recommended sealed side volumes. So we're doing this Kali 15. This is a 15 that I just did a design for a team member of mine. Never really heard of them. This is a belligerent 15. As you can see, it's out of stock. So I did a design for this sub a long time ago. We have this sub. This is a low baller. It's only 250 watts RMS, and once again, it is a 15 by CT Sounds. Then we have a little bit nicer, a little bit beefier, and this is a Phi SP4V2 15. Of course, this is in my way. Phi Cardio SP415 V2. So once again, this is more beefy. Then we have a really beefy. We got a Resilient Sounds Team 15. The sucker handles, I think, 5,000 watts RMS. So, trying to cover a wide spectrum here. Then we got a 15-inch Sundown U, 15-inch ZV5, and this one's kind of an oddball. You'll see why in a second. This is a DS18 Troublemaker Series SPL15 Neodymium subwoofer. Okay, so I have every single one of these subs currently in Basebox Pro. Confirmed all the parameters are correct and everything like that. And they're all inside sealed boxes that are 1.75 cubic feet. Now the reason I chose this number is because when you go through these posts on the internet, almost everybody who replies giving recommendations for volume say anywhere from 1.5 to 2 cubes per sub. So these are all single sub enclosures, all 15s, all 1.75 cubic feet. Now before I get into all these graphs and a few other things, I want to go over some stuff real quick. So one of the things that we need to consider when we are going to build let's just stick with sealed for the moment, a sealed box, is the Q value of that box. Now, in very basic terms, Q value can be thought of as the spring force acting against the subwoofer when it's playing. So, pretty simple concept. If the box is smaller, it is harder for the sub to move in and out. Therefore, it has a higher Q, meaning it has a tighter suspension, therefore usually a tighter response. A lower Q, let's say a Q of 0.5, would be something that'd be a little bit more sloppy, but usually tends to give a little bit more low-end bass performance. What we're looking at here right now is a snippet from the sealed side or sealed box section of the loudspeaker design cookbook. You guys can read it yourself, but although these particular cues are just points on a continuum, we can generalize about their subjective sound quality. High cues in the vicinity of 1 tend to have a warm, if somewhat robust quality that audio marketing people describe as sellable or saleable. Either way, a cue of about 1, you're looking at the tighter, the punchy, we're talking old school rock and roll, that 60, 50 hertz performance level. Then it starts to talk about lower Q values around 0.8 sound more detailed, due in part to improved set transients. I could get into that, but we're going to try and keep it simple here. And by comparison, somewhat shallow Q values at 0.5 is usually regarded as excessively taut and over-dampened. Some authorities, however, consider this value 0.5 to 0.6 to be optimal. Occasionally, a high-quality loudspeaker, such as this is a speaker that's super old, doesn't matter, is designed with a very high Q value of 1.2. In this case, it was to give the mini monitor more apparent bass in a mobile sound van situation. Qs greater than 1.2 are so, however, should be regarded as undesirable. And so basically what this is saying, guys, is when you are looking to choose a Q, you definitely don't want to be over 1.2 and you definitely don't want to be under 0.5. So, what Q should you use depending on what you're going for? I think this one might go into that a little bit better. If I can find my mouse here. Come on now. Another snippet directly from the Loudspeaker Design Cookbook. Goes over just some Q values. So you see a Q value of a 0.5. They call it critically dampened, transient perfect. These are just designation names. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is transient perfect. It's just a name they give it. We got the bezel response. This is a 0.55 or 0.577. And then we have the Butterworth response, max flat amplitude response with minimum cutoff, and that's going to be 0.707 Q. Now that's important. There's no such thing as one size fits all, but pretty much everyone who designs boxes, who knows what they're talking about, is going to agree that 0.707 Q is the best Q that you can have. And this is due to the fact that a 0.707 Q has a very, very slow roll-off. Therefore, once we initiate cabin gain, because basically we can expect to get an increase in low-end frequency performance due to the fact that our cabin is small and bass frequencies start to stack on top of each other, causing an amplitude. And basically, with a Q of 0.707, we can actually match that roll-off, therefore getting a flat response. That's not to say that a 0.707 is always what you're going for, but that is usually thought of as the Q that everyone is trying to get to. All right, so enough about Q. So one thing that I do want to go over is, one thing I do want to go over is, how do we even know if the sub that we want to put in a fourth order enclosure is actually good for it? So, I mean, in general, if it's good for sealed enclosures, it's good for fourth order designs. If it's not good for sealed enclosures, then it's not going to be as optimized for a fourth order. Not to say that you couldn't build a fourth order for it, but you're going to be able to get a lot more performance using a ported box or a sixth order in a box, or with a sub that prefers vented versus going with a sealed, or fourth with a sub that prefers sealed. So how do we determine that? So I actually have all the values here. I have them written down. Basically, so this sub right here, it has a EBP of 65.4. Now, as a general, well, not even really general, if you have an EBP of 50 or less, then your sub wants to be in a sealed enclosure, no questions asked. If you have an EBP between 50 and 100, you can do either vented or sealed. And if your EBP goes above 100, then you are talking about vented applications only. Usually I like to say, hey, if it's under 75, let's go with sealed. If it's over 75, let's just stick with ported. Once again, you can kind of make your own call there. It's not like a one size fits all, but that's the general consensus. This belligerent 15 has an EBP of 72, so kind of right in the middle. This CT Sounds has an EBP of 47.5, really good for sealed enclosures. This Phi has an EBP of 53, once again great for sealed enclosures. This Resilient Sounds Team 15 has an EVP of 56. So, I mean, you get the point. It's good for sealed enclosures. This U series sub, now it has an EVP of 111. So you would definitely want to be putting this inside a ported enclosure and or a 6th order. Now the ZV5 on the other hand has an EVP of 54.8. Great for sealed enclosures. And lastly, this is our kind of crazy sub. This is our off the rails in terms of being different. It has an EVP of 110. Okay, so with all that being said, let's go back to base box here. Remember, all of these are the same 15s I just showed you, in order actually, and they are all inside the same size enclosure. Like I said, we are talking about sealed right now, and I understand that this is geared towards 4th order design, but it's going to all come together here at the end. So, if we go to this box, we can see that we have that volume of 1.75 cubic feet, and our Q is 0.5. So, if we were to plot this, and here actually let me clear all these, you can see, granted, we really only start to hit, equal 0 decibel gain right at 100, but remember, this a 0.5 Q is going to really excel a little bit more inside the low end frequencies. It's not going to quite be as flat as a 0.707, but we can expect this to flatten out quite a bit after we put it in our car. That's a function called cabin gain. We can talk more about that later. Let's look at this guy. So we have, like I said, once again, same thing. This Q, a little bit low, huh? 0.4 is less than 0.5. Let's look at the graph. We can see, it really doesn't even hit 0 decibels until about 200 hertz, and the roll off once again is pretty sharp. This would not be great in this application. At least you could do better. Okay, so what about this guy here? And this is the CT Bio 15, by the way. It has a Q of 0.714. Well, let's plot it on the graph, okay? Wow, look at that. So as soon as we get to that point, closer to that 0.707, you can see now we're doing pretty good right around the 50 range, and we have a lot less drastic drop off below that, which means that after cabin gain, we're pretty likely to have a nice flat response here. Let's keep going. We have, this is the Phi. It has a Q of over 0.5, so it's not bad at all by any means. Let's plot it out. Actually, here, let's clear some graphs. We're going to just compare to this guy here. So as you can see, it's definitely losing a little bit here, gains a little bit there, and that's probably because of the lower Q. It's able to get a little bit more of that low end, but you can see how this does not have quite the flatness that the 0.707 had. All right, let's keep going. This is going to be the Resilient Sounds Team 15. Once again, we got a Q below 0.5. It's not great. And if we look at the graph, I mean, guys, that's lousy. That's horrible. I mean, we're looking at not even really any, because you got to remember, the bass we want to hear is from here down. So it only gets good right at the very end of where we even want it, and then it's pretty lousy all the way down. Okay, this is going to be the U series. Once again, look at this Q, 0.373. Absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. Let's put this guy back up here because this is our closest to 0.707. I mean, guys, it speaks for itself. This Q sucks, and we get a really bad response as a result of this. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well is this is one of our two subs that we're talking about today that aren't designed, are not optimized for sealed enclosures. So, not only is our Q horrible, but I mean, look at this thing. I mean, this would not sound the way you want it to sound. This would sound like garbage. Okay. This is going to be the ZV5. It has a Q just over 0.5, respectable. And look, I mean, it's not as good as the point, closer to 0.707, but looks pretty good. And lastly here, we have our DS18. Remember, said this is kind of more of our outliers as well again. Our Q is under 0.5, so not great. And probably the worst one we've had so far. I'll put it side by side with our good graph here. I mean, guys, would you really want that? I don't think so. So I just want to, show how Q really does make a difference. And, the proof's in the pudding, in the programming. Alrighty, so I've gone ahead and I've turned all of these boxes into fourth orders. Just for sake, I'm going to make them all 1-to-1. So like I said, it's still 1.75 sealed, 1.75 ported, and I went ahead and I also made the tuning frequency 45 Hertz for every single one of these. That's just because that's the #1 recommendation I see from people on the internet, so I figure that's what everyone's trying to go for. And if they're just making a box in a random volume and they're choosing their tuning randomly, they're probably just going to pick 45. So see here how this number is 46.22 and this is our tuning 45. So this actually isn't horrible. I'd almost say this is acceptable, but it's a good example of what I'm trying to bring up here, that basically we want to match the vented side tuning to the sealed side resonance. Now this is going to be determined by tons of factors. I mean, obviously size of the enclosure, but a lot of it comes down to the suspension materials and the soft parts inside the driver. So like I said, you want these numbers to match, and here they're pretty close to matching. Like I said, pretty much fine. Here I'd say this is a little bit too far away from where we're trying to get to. So 41 and 45. Here's one that's, once again, pretty far apart. We got 51, almost 52 for the resonance and 45 for the tuning. Let's see here, and I'll just shoot through the rest of these here. Once again, that one's pretty close. Not close at all. Okay. And absolutely horrible. So what I want to do now is I'm going to make all of these correct, and I'm going to kind of go through the process of how I do that. So what I'm going to be doing here is, first I'm going to go back to this sealed box. I'm using the DS18 sub right now, by the way, and I'm going to try and figure out what volume is going to get me to a more desirable Q, basically. So like I told you, as you lower the volume, you get a higher Q. I want to see this at least 0.5. So let's drop it down to 1.5. Nah, still pretty low. Okay, how about 1? Wow. What does it take to get this thing? Nope. There we go. So 0.7 cubes of sealed airspace is what gets me to a Q of 0.5. Now, something I haven't told you is that BaseBox automatically does the heavy damping or dampening material whenever you do a sealed box. So once again, why did I leave that out? Because a lot of guys just assume that they need polyfill inside their enclosures, and I'm going to show you why sometimes you don't want it. So like I said, we are at 0.7 cubes, which pretty much anybody's going to say that's not big enough for a 15, but that's how we got our Q to 0.5. So what happens when we remove any polyfill? We get an even higher Q. And if you remember from the book, this is actually really close to the basal response. So obviously our volume still sucks, so let's switch that because we have a higher than 0.5 Q. So let's see what we can do now. Oh, look at that. 1. Look at that. So now we have 1.4 cubes and we still got our Q of 0.5. So example number 1, that hey, maybe we don't just want to use these random recommendations. Maybe we should punch it in and see what's going to get us to the Q value, or at least closest to the Q value that we're looking for, while also maintaining enough volume. So I'm going to take this data and I'm going to punch it into the other box. Oh wow, look at that. Okay, now I'm going to change the tuning to match. We can see that that helped make this look better, but actually just because I want to make it obvious here, see the difference, guys? We have a lot higher overall peak because we're matching up that sealed side resonance, which is going to allow us to have cabin gain take care of those low frequencies for us better because it's starting off at a higher point. I mean, I think everyone's going to agree this looks better than, you know, what we would have done if we were just taking out random recommendations. Okay, so I'm actually going to do this for all of our designs that we have here today. Alrighty, there we go. So, like I said, just take a good look at all these graphs that we have here. Try to remember a few, and next time you see me, all of these graphs will be correct, or at least the boxes will have been redesigned correctly, and you'll see the difference. Okay, so I have changed all the boxes. I have also put them in order, roughly, if not perfectly, so that the drivers that are most optimized for sealed are on this side, and the drivers that are least optimized for sealed are on this side. In this case, literally not optimized for sealed at all. Just to recap here, we took all of the drivers and referenced the sealed box to make sure that we have a good Q, added, took away damping as needed, and now we have a bunch of boxes that, in my opinion, have been designed properly, obviously quickly, but properly. So, we look at these graphs. I mean, I think it's pretty clear to see as we move down, they start to look worse and worse. This one, this driver is fairly optimized for sealed. As you can see, it's, you know, EBP of 65, but the graph looks a little bit weird. We can see this weird slope here, whereas we got this driver here, EBP is 55, so very close to 50, and much more smooth. So obviously the smoother this graph is on the top, the more of a circular mountain shape we have, the less peaky, more bandwidth we're going to expect out of the driver, or out of the enclosure. And you can see here our bandwidth is 36 here, same thing about 36, a little bit less bandwidth here. I think that's because we got a little bit more of a peak there. And our last one here, look at that bandwidth. This is without cabin gain, nothing. You know, bandwidth of 54 hertz. This thing says it can play all the way from 85 to 30. 85 is a little higher than I would ever push a driver, but 30 is not bad. And then if we want to go ahead and we can take into account cabin gain, which I will be honest with you is more so a art rather than a science. You kind of have to know the vehicle that you're using, and you kind of have to know how to take what cabin gain does and put it in more of a realistic perspective of what you would actually see in real life. So we'll just do it for all these guys, because honestly, I mean, these guys look so horrible. I'm not even gonna bother plotting them or anything like that. So you see this huge hump right here. I know for pretty much a fact that in reality we are not going to be seeing the peak frequency of this box around, oh, it looks like about 34, 35. I mean, I guess it's possible, but it's not going to be this aggressive. You're gonna more so see this just travel evenly down like this. So essentially this box is gonna play, and I never play any of my subs any higher than 50 just because they start to heat up really bad. So if we look at 50, we could safely assume that it's going to carry nice and even all the way down, and then 20 is really the lowest we care about. So this is 20. You can see this guy's basically going to play from 50 to 20 almost equally at about 3 decibels higher efficiency than normal, which is awesome. So this, ironically, of course, is a driver that's the most optimized for sealed enclosures out of all of these, and it has the best looking graph out of all of them. We can plot this guy real quick, and you can see here, so once again, 50 is a little tiny bit low. We're looking at, just above a 0 dB. Oh, actually, no, that's a 3 still. So, I mean, here we might be looking at pretty good bandwidth, actually, even possibly. I mean, this guy's dipping all the way almost up to 9 dB efficiencies at 30 hertz. So this box is going to really perform where you want it to. Now this is granted if you want it to perform from 50 down, which for musical applications that kind of is what you're going for. None of these enclosures on these are going to be really optimized for maximum SPL. I mean, if you're looking for maximum SPL, you're really not looking for fourth order. In general, that's such a generalized statement, but for the most part, if you're looking for a musical build, which is kind of what I've designed all these to be, I mean, they're all 1-to-1s, they're all tuned a little bit, lower. So, I mean, I think overall, you guys can see what I'm saying. I went in, made sure that the Q was where I want it to be, or as close to as possible, put that volume in here, changed the dampening as needed. So this one ended up not needing dampening material. And I also, one thing I didn't mention before, I did add box leakage losses to the vented side. Basebox Pro isn't it doesn't change anything if you have leakage in the sealed section, at least not that I can tell. But you're usually going to use 7. That's a pretty standardized number for box leakage, your QL, and that does change the vented side response slightly, so you do want to add that in when you're doing this. Once again, I'll repeat myself here, I think it's very, very obvious that all of these boxes look better than they did before, and all of them were designed in no way, shape, or form in a way that you would design a box of fourth order specifically if you were taking advice from the internet specifically. So now what I want to do is I want to start from scratch, and I'm going to use a completely different driver, and I just kind of want to give you guys a rundown of how I would do it if I were to do it myself. So I'm going to go ahead and close all these real quick, and then we will, when you come back, I will have a different driver pulled up, and we'll start from scratch, and we will design a box from the ground up. Alrighty, so we have everything pulled up here. I have chosen a ZV518 dual 1 ohm. This is actually the driver that I have inside my own personal rig. You can see here the EBP is 48, so very optimized for sealed enclosures, because normally I would want to make sure that my driver is optimized for sealed enclosures before I buy it and decide that I want to build a fourth order with it. So we're going to go ahead and go into the box real quick. It's automatically going to be on a sealed box. And once again, I'm just going to go ahead and input, let's say, 3 cubes. That's probably big. Remember, I would really love to get my Q 42.707. Once again, I got some heavy damping here, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that down to this. Not quite. About that. That's pretty lucky. I don't know if 3 cubic feet's right, but we're going to go ahead and roll with this for now. And I'll maybe potentially come back to this, and I'll show you why here in just a second. So we're going to accept that. Copy. Box. Switch this over to a 4th order. We're going to stick with a 1-to-1, just cuz. And it's not going to give us our resonance here until we change that slightly. So resonance is 42.75. Great. And you can already tell this is looking pretty good. So, I can't lie though. A vented side of 3 cubes on an 18 is pretty small. At least most would say. So, let's switch that to 5. And so now we have to go back over here because, I mean, if you were trying to do a 2-to-1 or whatever, I guess you could keep it like this, and I guess in some sense it's not a bad idea if you're stuck with the 0.707. I'm just trying to go over all the different variables that you might want to consider, that you might run into, and just go over the mindset that I have when I'm designing boxes, because you really have to go back and forth quite a bit and make decisions on what you're cool with sacrificing and all that to actually come to a final box. So once again, let's go over here and see if we can get this a little bit bigger, or get the Q closer with a bigger box. No, not really. You know what? I'm actually just going to stick with this and keep it at the 707 because I really like that Q, really like that volume, honestly, for an 18, especially at super high power. The bigger the sealed section, the lower the power handling you're going to have without reaching X max. And actually, let's show you that right now. So we're going to go back here, and honestly, this is not horrible. Some might say that's small, some might say that's big. It's all up for debate, but we're going to roll with this for now because we got a 707Q, decent here. And actually, screw it. Let's make it a 2-to-1. Let's plot this. Not bad. So we're peaking, right around our tuning frequency, 41, 40, 42. Let's implement some cabin gain here. And let's start looking at some variables here. So cone displacement. So this sub handles 2000 watts easily. You can see we have plenty of X max to handle here. Let's say 3000, we're overpowering this guy. Still plenty of X max to go with. And now that I'm looking at that, let's say I know I'm never going to push more than 3000 watts. I say, hey, well, maybe we can make that sealed side, a little bit bigger. And we're willing to go down to a Q, lower than 0.707. So let's just go back here and mess around with that. And I'm just going to go ahead and take out the dampening so I can get as high a Q as possible. Let's try that 4. 0.6 was, in between the range of that low Q value was 0.5 to 0.6. So let's stick with that. Come back here. Now we got a 1-to-1. Oof, but look, we got a problem. 35 for a tuning on a 4th order is probably not desirable. So once again, I'm just kind of going over stuff as I'm thinking about it. I probably wouldn't actually make this exact approach. I'm just trying to show you guys as much stuff as possible. So I would say 35 is too low of a tuning. Most would agree. Let's say I'm stuck on the 45 hertz tuning. So this is kind of where we can start on the 4th order side instead of the sealed side and start our design here. So let's go with 2.5. Look at that. 45.4, not bad. 0.4. Oh, damn it. Alrighty, sorry about that. I accidentally closed the program. So we got a 2.5 sealed side volume, 45 hertz for our resonance. We matched that resonance on our tuning, QL of 7. We're still at a 2-to-1. Might change that. And so we got to go back now to our sealed box and make sure that we can get our Q right. So let's go there. Switch that to 2.5. Your cat. And see our Q here is a little high. So let's start adding some more material. And look at that. Pretty close to that 0.707 again, which I really like. So let's just stick with that for now. Go back to this guy. And honestly, like I said, 5 cubes for an 18 with 4th orders. You don't have to match what the manufacturer recommendations are exactly for ported box volume. So Sundown wants this box in 7 cubes on a ported box. 5 is, in my opinion, perfectly fine. And 2.5 is not too small for an 18 in a sealed enclosure. Once again, some people might disagree with me, but my 18s are currently only getting about 2 cubes each, and they are just fine. So let's see what we have here as far as a graph. And look at this, guys. I mean, we got a nice rounded graph where we got the tuning that we want. Now let's add some cabin gain here. I mean, just look at that, guys. Really nice peak right around 40, not too high to where it's going to be painful in the car. I really don't like my subs going too hard past 50 anyway. I really don't care about 50 hertz, honestly, almost at all. Really 45, 40, and then down to 20, and we see we still have a gain at 20. In fact, let's go like this and just show you. So we're peaking right around 40, 39. You can see we're at a 10.1 decibel efficiency gain. At 30, drop down to about 8, so we've only lost about 2 dB to 30, and we're going to lose quite a bit here down to 20, right around 4, so about 6 dB down at 20. But honestly, guys, that's not bad at all. So once again, I think I've beat this horse dead enough here in this video. Do not listen to people on the internet. Do not ask for advice from people on the internet, because they are not going to give you the numbers that you actually need, because they are not going to be going into any program and punching in all this data for you. They're just going to throw out a number that they heard from someone else, and if you listen to them, you're not going to be happy, and at the end of the day, you're not going to have the box that you truly want. So please spend some money, get some software. You can use this video as a reference on how to use it. If you guys want me to, I'll even make more videos on designing 4th order specifically to really get you guys inside my brain on how I do this. Number one goal of this whole video is to just show you guys how people on the internet are not going to help you. They might be thinking they're helping you, but there's just no way for them to know what you need unless they know exactly which driver you're using. Not just knowing, but they've worked with it before. They know your car, they know your goals, they know everything about your build and what you're going for, what you have, and they simply don't, and they're simply not using a program, because no one's got the time to do that unless you're paying them. On that note, if you guys don't want to use software, I hope I've shown you how important it is, and hopefully if you're not willing to invest the time to learn and the money to get the program, you now understand that it's probably better for you to just hire a designer and let them do the work for you, because trust me, it's not worth spending hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars on wood and materials days of your time to build a flop and you're just pissed off. So once again, guys, I hope this video has been helpful. If you guys have any questions, you can leave me a comment, and if you guys want me to go deeper into this, I'd be happy to do so. Just let me know what you guys need me to cover better, and I'd be happy to make another video.